Quite often, we have endpoints that can only be called by authenticated users. For example, in our backend project, we have this endpoint for getting the listings of the current user. This endpoint requires the user to be authenticated. So if we call it, by default, we get an error with the status code of 401, which means unauthorized. And in the body of the response, we get this error saying access denied, no token provided. So to call this endpoint, we have to pass our authentication token in the request header. First, I'm going to show you how to do it here, and then I'm going to show you how to do it in code. So we go to the headers tab, add a new key. Now in my implementation on the server, I expect a key called x-auth-token. Now for the value, I'm going to paste an authentication token, send. So now we can successfully call this endpoint. So here are my listings. Now let's see how we can do this in code. So let's go to client.js. Here we need to apply a transformation to our requests. So every time we send a request to the server, we automatically include the authentication token. With this, we don't have to worry about sending the authentication token for individual requests. So after we create this API client, here we call API client.addAsync request transform. Here we pass an async function that takes a request object. And this is where we're going to transform our request. So first we need to get our authentication token. So on the top, let's import auth storage from, we go up to auth/storage module. Now we need to go to this module and export the get token function. So over here, get token. Now back to the client module. In our transformation function, we call auth storage.get token. We await the call to get an auth token. Now, if we don't have a token, then we're going to return. Otherwise, we're going to add the authentication token in the request header. So request.headers of the key that our server expects is x-auth-token. We set that to auth token. As simple as that. So this is how we can call protected API endpoints. Now, if you're curious how this works on a server, look at this auth module inside the middleware folder. In this function, we look for a header called x-auth token. This is where we have the auth token. If we don't have a token, we're going to return a response with a status code of 401. And in the body of the response, we're going to add this error object, access denied, no token provided. Otherwise, we're going to verify the token using this library, JSON Web Token. So this is a separate library that I've installed with NPM. Now, if you're building your backend with, let's say, Ruby or Python or C#, then there is a separate library you need to install to verify JSON Web Tokens. So here we verify the token using the private key that I told you about earlier. Now, once again, we shouldn't include the private key in the source code. This is a terrible practice. This is purely for demoing. So we verify the token. If we have a valid token, we get the payload, which is a user object. So we store it in the request so we can access the current user. Now, if the token is not valid, this line is going to throw an error. So we'll end up in the catch block. And here we return a response with a status code of 400 and say invalid token.